to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Today we're going to take an in-depth look into the HM Prison Isis. HM Prison Isis is a Category C male young offenders institution located in the Thamesmead area of the Royal Borough of Greenwich in South East London, England. Isis Prison is operated by Her Majesty's Prison Service and is situated next to Belmarsh Prison and Thameside Prison. In May 2009, the Ministry of Justice awarded Interserve a £110 million contract to design and construct a new prison called Isis on underused land within the perimeter wall of Belmarsh Prison. The new prison was built to Category B standards. In August 2009, the construction site of the new prison was evacuated after contractors discovered a suspected World War II bomb. Isis Prison is located on the site of the former Royal Arsenal, and the suspected bomb was found to be an empty shell casing. Interserve handed over the completed Isis Prison in April 2010, with the prison becoming operational soon after. In January 2012, an inspection report by Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons criticised the faulty technology which was being used at the prison. The report also found that the combination of new and transferred staff was causing problems in forming good staff-prisoner relations at the jail. However, the report praised the prisoners' resettlement services, low drug use, and support of prisoners at risk of self-harm. A month later, inmates at Isis claimed that there was a significant gang culture developing in the prison. Isis Prison Governor Graham Hawkins at the time admitted that gangs were a problem within the prison. As a young offenders institution and Cat C prison, Isis holds male offenders from the age of 18. However, there is no maximum age. Accommodation comprises of mixture of single cells and double cells in 2 house blocks. The prison also has entry building and central activity centre, which houses a learning academy, segregation unit and PE academy. However, the prison does not have inpatient healthcare facilities. Education and vocational training at the prison is delivered in partnership with Kensington and Chelsea College. Courses include mechanics, which is a motorbike repair shop, construction, waste management, bicycle repair, barbering, catering, reprographics, broadcasting and media studies, ESOL, and drug-related studies. There is a visitor centre at the prison which is run by the Spurgeon charity. The visits complex consists of a main room, a supervised child play area, refreshment counter and vending machines. HMP YOI Isis is in the southeast of London and is the first bespoke establishment of its kind in the London region. Being a young adult and Category C training prison for young men and adults up to the age of 30, the prison was constructed within the perimeter of HMP Belmarsh and received its first prisoners on the 26th of July 2010. The prison is the first whole-built public sector prison to be built in the last 20 years. In December 2016, the age cap of 18 to 30 was lifted, allowing all prisoners of all ages to be transferred to the jail. 2 house blocks, Thames and Meridian, both have 4 spurs, radiating from a central hub within 3 landings on each spur. On average, there is accommodation for about 80 prisoners on each spur in a mixture of single and double cells. There are also a few fully equipped cells for prisoners with disabilities. The prison has a broad-based curriculum that supports academic achievement, vocational training, interventions and PE activities. The interventions program is subject to offenders' needs. The regime is delivered in partnership with A4E. The healthcare is run by Care UK and there are no inpatient facilities. The prison was given an inspection in the summer of 2018. In their latest report, the inspectors said HMP YOI Isis is a Category C training prison in the South East London, which sits within the wall line of the high security Belmarsh prison. At the time of our inspection, the prison held just over 600 convicted prisoners. Almost 70% of the population were under 30 and 22% were under 21 years old. Almost half of those were serving over 4 years. Our last inspection of the prison in 2016 was disappointing. At the time, we recorded insufficient progress and a failure to attend to deliver some of the basic services. We were particularly critical of a restricted regime first put in place in 2013, which is still in operation when we inspected 3 years later. Restrictions persisted, but reassuringly, Improvements had been made, and the average number of prisoners locked up during the working day had reduced to 22% of the population compared to 40% last time we visited. Prisoners also had better access to domestic activities and association time, which included evening association for those on an enhanced wing. Prison again talked about plans to introduce and improve the regime, although at this inspection the plans seemed more credible as staffing numbers had improved significantly. The current governor took up the post shortly after our last inspection and had clearly prioritised getting the basics right, with visible leadership evident and a more positive culture beginning to emerge. The prison had been authorised to conduct a local recruitment campaign to recruit prison officers, instead of relying on the usual national campaign which sometimes displaced people from their home areas and created long commutes. The governor believed that this local recruitment had enabled her to appoint a team of officers more committed to the aims of her establishment. The influx of new staff clearly brought its own challenges, with 80% of the staff group still in their first year of service, but the governor commendably saw this as a long-term opportunity for the prison and not a hindrance. Similar to the other prisoners holding significant numbers of young people, levels of violence at HMP YOI Isis had increased and were very high. 1 in 4 prisoners in our survey reported feeling unsafe, but the senior team had introduced a number of initiatives aimed at reducing violence and encouraging good behaviour. The quality of investigations of violence incidents had improved significantly. Systems to identify and deal with gang activity were well managed, and relationships with local police were very good. Additionally, the governor was clearly focused on tackling any potential staff corruption. New behaviour management processes designed to deal with people with the most complex individuals were promising, although it was a little too early to see their benefits. Concerted effort had been made to encourage good behaviour, including the introduction of an enhanced unit, peer support roles, and opportunities for release on temporary licence, otherwise known as ROTL. All departments were working together to try and tackle the drug misuse problem. It was vital that this commendable initiative and effort was sustained. Our survey of those held was very negative around those 2 critical areas. Only 48% of the respondents said that most staff treated them with respect, and only 46% could say that they had not experienced any kind of victimization by staff. Important recent steps had been taken by the senior team to deal with staff who contributed to the negative experiences of prisoners, but more work was needed to understand and address these negative perceptions. Our own observations and discussions with the prisoners about staff, in contrast, were more positive. Indeed, we were encouraged by the energy and commitment of many staff we met. Most prisoners spoke about good officers that they could talk to if they needed help. Prison staff and managers had received hundreds of letters of thanks from prisoners that they had helped through difficult times. Living conditions had improved since our last inspection. Communal areas and most external areas were clean and well presented. Prisoners were encouraged to clean their cells, and there was little graffiti and few offensive pictures on display. The governor and a team of her staff also hosted regular think tank meetings with prisoners to discuss ways that they could improve conditions at the prison. However, our visit took place during the summer heat wave, and inspectors were struck by the oppressive heat in some cells that had no curtains or fans to lower the temperature. One of our most serious concerns was around the use of force, which we were not assured was always justified. We identified a need for more rigorous scrutiny of when and how to use force and how it was applied. When there had been a failure to turn on body-worn cameras, de-escalate incidents, or complete important assurance paperwork, governance arrangements did not robustly challenge this. Some of the youngest prisoners are often the most vulnerable, and yet they were disproportionately represented in the statistics relating to force and segregation. We were disappointed that very little had been done to achieve the main recommendation made at the last inspection concerning the prison's management of equality and diversity, and we have been compelled to make similar main recommendations in this report. The diverse population at the prison demands more flexibility in the application of policy to assure that the difference is recognised and understood. We were particularly concerned about the adverse outcomes for foreign national and young prisoners. The establishment needed to do more to understand the distinct needs of these groups on arrival at the prison and dedicate resources to ensuring that their needs were met. In the case of young prisoners, a greater understanding of the development needs of young people still going through the process of maturation was required. Prisoners still did not spend enough time in education or training, and those on vocational additional courses, often did not have time to gain accredited qualifications. Poor attendance and punctuality contributed significantly to Ofsted's judgment that the overall effectiveness of education, skills and work required improvement. Prisoners were supported to build and maintain family ties, but a shortfall of offender assessment system, OASIS, assessments impacted prisoners' ability to progress through their sentence. Offender management and the quality of supervision were mixed, and there were weaknesses in public protection arrangements. Support for care leavers and resettlement planning were, however, better. Our assessments have remained largely unchanged since the last inspection. Although this was not the whole story, we noted an encouraging change in the direction since the appointment of the current governor, and the culture and atmosphere in the prison were definitely improving. We left the prison confident that the senior managers and staff would use our report to effect further positive change, particularly in those areas which caused us the most concern. This report was done by Peter Clark, CVO OBE QPM, on September 2018. A corrupt prison warden, who was 28 at the time, tried to smuggle 4 ounces of cannabis into the Young Offenders Institute in her bra to earn money to fund a master's in criminology. Safak Boskirk from Islington, North London, was paid £1,000 for each package that she delivered. She agreed to smuggle the contraband drugs into the prison in return for cash from the gang. Miss Boskirk said she wanted the cash to pay debts and to fund a degree in criminology. She received a 2-year suspended jail sentence after admitting smuggling. Safak Boskirk smuggled in cannabis, mobile phones, SIM cards and charger cables into the Young Offenders Institution. She was caught by a sniffer dog as she went through the security at HMP YOI Isis in Thamesmead in London. When strip searched on the 12th of July, staff found 4 ounces of cannabis stashed in her bra, along with 4 mobile phones, 18 SIM cards and charging cables stuck in her waistband. The officers became suspicious about Miss Boskirk when they observed the way she was interacting with certain prisoners. She had become a prison officer in January 2015. Southwark Crown Court heard the 28-year-old mother of 2 was paid cash each time she delivered the contraband. She used the cash to pay off £32,000 in credit card debts and to fund a master's degree. Court heard that Miss Boskirk was paid the cash by a former inmate, Luke Powell, to bring the contraband in to Joshua Ogwell. Jane Carpenter, prosecuting, said, between March and July, prison officers working at the prison began to suspect that Miss Boskirk was behaving inappropriately towards prisoners whilst on duty. Staff then decided to conduct a staff search on Tuesday the 12th of July. On that day, the police received a phone call from the prison informing them that they had detained Miss Boskirk in the staff entrance. It was revealed in court that although Miss Boskirk had joined the prison system in 2015, she agreed several months later to begin smuggling contraband by the former prisoner, Luke Powell, who at the time was still on the run. When asked who it was for, she provided them with the name Joshua Ogwell. When she asked how much she was paid, she said £1,000. Miss Carpenter said that Miss Boskirk also told police that a former prisoner had paid her to bring the drugs in, and said that if he was arrested, he would be taken straight back in. Miss Boskirk's own mobile phone showed messages had been made between herself and people in D-Wing in the prison. Details within the messages were about the size of the packages and the fact that she did not want them to be too big. Miss Carpenter said that Miss Boskirk had admitted she had been dealing in the prison for several months and had been paid several £1,000s in cash. Whilst in prison, she had been approached by a prisoner who offered her cash to do the dirty work. She said she had no excuses and no pressure had been put on her. She saw it as an opportunity to make extra money and pay off her debts. She's doing a master's in criminology, studying why people commit crimes. She should probably teach the class. The potential prison value going on the amount of drugs that were found located in the prison was between 5,850 and 11,700 for the 117 grams of cannabis. Miss Carpenter added that the phones were worth between £500 and £1,000, while SIM cards could be rented to prisoners for as much as £50 a night. Graham Wilson, defending, said the defendant fully understands the seriousness of the offences which she faces. But Judge Martin Griffin interjected, I am not surprised. She is doing a master's in criminology, studying why people commit crimes, when really she could probably teach the class. Mr. Wilson continued, her first concern is not so much herself, but her 2 children aged 7 and 4. She had been approached by a prisoner at the time she was going through a very difficult breakup with her partner and father of her children. However, the judge said, people who work in the prison service must know, just as all of us who do not, that drugs inside prisons and phones inside prisons are entirely illegal. They give rise to all sorts of problems for prisons and officers who come under pressure to bring them in, such that the last thing you should have done was to give away to those items into the prison for money. That is even before I come to the fact that you are doing a master's in criminology. You must have been burning with embarrassment every time they talked about crime and the causes of crime, thinking, good grief, that's me, isn't it? Your barrister has said quite rightly, I should think about the children. But it seems to me that those are matters that you should have had in mind, rather than coming to court telling me that I should have them in mind. They had noticed that she was no longer wearing a ring, and they were also aware that she was in massive financial debt. At one stage, she broke down during the course of her employment, and that's when she was approached by a prisoner. Mr. Wilson said Miss Boskirk's ex-partner had raked up £32,000 in credit card debts in her name because he had a poor credit history. He added that if she was imprisoned, there was nobody to take care of the children. The likelihood is that they were going to care. Not only would they likely end up in social services care, they might actually be separated. Judge Griffiths said, all of which should have been at the forefront of her mind the first time she said, you give me £1,000 and I will take contraband into my place of work. Mr. Wilson said, the temptation was overwhelming. The reason it reoccurred once it happened is those prisoners had her over a barrel. She was extremely vulnerable at the time, financially and mentally, because of the burdens of debt and the children as well as no support. She is extremely remorseful and she is ashamed. Judge Griffiths interrupted. Funnily enough, I was listening to Radio 4 this morning and the MP for Shipley was having the leader of the Women's Equality Party against him for termity for saying men and women should be treated equally before the law. If this was a man, what would you be saying? Nice mitigation. Thank you very much. Off you go. Mr. Wilson responded, if it was not for the children, I would not have a leg to stand on in terms of arguing for a suspended sentence, sparing Miss Boskirk of immediate custodial sentence. Judge Griffiths said, people who work for the prison service and all of us who do not know that bringing drugs into prison is entirely illegal. They give rise to all sorts of problems for prisoners and officers who come under pressure to bringing them in, such that the last thing you should have done was to give way to those items into prisoners for money. That is even before I come to the fact that you were doing a master's in criminology. You must have been burning with embarrassment every time they talked about crime and the causes of crime, thinking, good grief, that's me, isn't it? Your barrister has quite rightly told me that I should think about the children. But it seems to me that those matters that you should have in mind, rather than coming to court and telling me that I should have them in mind. Miss Boskirk admitted one count of conveying List Article A's into prison and one count of conveying List B articles into prison. She was sentenced to 2 years, suspended for 24 months, and ordered to undertake 300 hours of unpaid community work. Thank you for joining us today. What are your opinions of HMP YOI Isis? Please let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and share. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more Street Crime UK content, hit subscribe and press that bell so you can join us on the next video. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.